All right, so I have a bunch of models here for our Zeddy animation. Now the difference between this is they're going to need a little bit of different IDs and stuff like that. So I'm going to leave these two, or the standing one, the same, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set up the sitting animation. So these are the models that I kind of basically worked on with the texturing and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and go to our project, and then we need to change the model identifier a little bit for this. So we're going to go ahead and set sitting, yep, so sitting, and unless it's 1T, I don't know, but doesn't matter. We'll go with that for now. So we'll confirm, and then we'll go ahead and save project, and then we can export project, Java entity, and then we'll go ahead and select our folder where it's located in. So not CCTV craft, I want it under MCreator and tamed entity, and then I should have a Zeddy sitting one. So sitting. So this one will separate the model a little bit from the other one. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the other model here, which is the aggro one. And then we can open up Blockbench, and that's basically the texture that I went with for the aggro one. And what we want to do here is do the exact same thing. So we're going to make sure that this one is a little bit different. So aggro, and we're not setting the class name. Remember not to do that. So that's really important. And then what we can do is we can save the project. This will make sure that our save is set up when we go back to it if we need to. And then we'll export Java entity, and then we'll again select the same folder that we're going to be importing from. So I'll just quickly set this up. So this one will be aggro. And this will allow us to import our models into MCreator separately. So they're a little bit different, but it's what we need to do. So once we've done that, we have the models here. We have our two textures for the regular Zeddy and the sitting Zeddy up here, and then our aggro Zeddy down here. So we can start importing these into MCreator. All right, so let's start with the textures, as these are the most easiest to import. What we're going to do is we're going to go import texture, and then we're going to select import entity textures, and then we're going to select our two Zeddy ones. So those are imported under the textures for entities. And then what we can do is we can go over to the 3D models and texture mapping, and then what we'll do is we'll import Java model, and then we can start with the standing one, which should be just the regular Zeddy model. Now we need to set up all the animations for here. Now we have a tail animation, so what we're going to do for this one is basically set the swinging animation for the left leg for the Z axis. Our head animation there's already a head animation that we can use. So this allows the proper head rotation and stuff like that for pitch, and I think it has some support for yaw as well. So you will set that one. And then what we're going to do for the legs is alternate the legs, basically reverse them for the back ones. So left back would be right leg animation, and then the right back would be the left animation for the leg, and then the left front would be the left animation, and then right would be the right leg animation, like basically reversed from the other ones. So we need to find them all in this particular list, so this will take some time. I'll cut back in when I find them all. All right, so this one is done. So we have our tail animation, our head animation, and our feet leg animations. We're going to set that one to override. And then we need to do that for our other ones as well. So we need the Zeddy sitting one. This is actually going to be a really easy one to do because all we need to do is basically the head animation. So we'll just go ahead and select the head animation. It's somewhere in here. Head movement, so that one. We don't actually need the tail animation or the feet animation because it's not going to be actually moving. So we can override that, and we should have two models now. If it doesn't add the model, you need to rename your model in Blockbench for your model identifier, because that's going to basically be overriding the existing one that you imported. So make sure that you have a separate name for that. So we have one more model that we need to import, and that's going to be the aggro one. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we did for the standing model, which is our feet animation, head animation, and our tail animation. So let's go ahead and do that. I will cut back in when they're all set up. All right, so we have all our animations set up like we did for the sitting one, and we're going to go ahead and click override animations, and now we should have all of our models set up now. So what we can do is we can now go over to our mod elements, and we're going to create a living entity, and then we'll start with calling it Zeti. So I think Zeti, there we go. And we're going to go ahead and allow us to select our model. Now, before I get into that, I should probably explain some of the settings that we're going to be using here. So the top one here is the display name. This is going to be set to whatever we want it to be. This can actually be displayed differently if we rename the display name, but we do need to set our Zeti1, which is our model here, and we're going to set our texture to probably you know what, I don't think we're actually going to be setting the texture. We're going to make a empty texture for this, and then we're going to use model layers in order to swap out the texture itself. So I'm going to open up a texture here that we have for our aggro one, and I'm just going to basically remove this, and I'm going to call it Zeti empty. And then we'll go ahead and save this as a blank file. You're probably thinking I'm nuts right now, but you'll see in a moment what we're going to be doing. So we're going to import that into MCreator, and then what we're going to do, now this is actually technically required, so we need to have some sort of texture here. So this is why we're using an empty texture. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use model layers instead to route the actual textures and stuff over. So basically we can set our model here for what we're using, and then we can also set the actual texture on this part here. So we have 3 models, so we need to set up the models for this. We're going to go ahead with the default for the standing one and the default for the aggro one. And then for the bottom one, what we're going to need is our sitting model, and we're going to go ahead and select aggro for this one, or pardon me, not sitting. I believe it's just the regular Zeti one that we have here. And because this isn't actually going to be running around or anything like that for the sitting one, we don't need to worry about the actual animations or anything like that. Now, the display conditions for these, we're going to have to set these up. So I'm going to go ahead and create those in just a minute, but we'll set those in a second. Animations, we don't need to worry about because we didn't do any. Mob, I don't know what one I really want to go with. Probably a creature for this. We'll set the health to about 20. And follow range, we probably want this a little bit higher. I'm going to go probably 32 for this one. And the tracking range, how far I can see a player, I think this is. So following and then tracking 64. So yeah, that should be fine. And attack, maybe bump this up. And all these pretty much are optional. We're just setting the creature setting to basically enable, so we can actually go ahead and make sure other mobs aren't like targeting it. Things like iron golems and stuff will target mobs, so we are basically just going with a creature for this one. And sound effects, I'm not too worried about that at the moment. Sync data, we will need some data here for this, mainly for the model. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We can call it whatever we want, but I'm going to go ahead and go with a string for this one so we can actually separate between all 3 different states a little bit. So we're gonna just leave this default one to standing. And I'm gonna capitalize all the letters just so it's easier to remember for me. And then what we're going to do is we're going to skip the inventory for the moment. We don't need to worry about vibrations. For the triggers, we'll come back to that in a little bit. AI tasks. So here we're going to have to set some settings because it's going to be tameable. What we're going to need is a food for that. So we're going to enable this checkbox here. We're going to, now enabling it will not really make it tameable. We actually have to set something for it to be tamed with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select something that we might use for the recipe, maybe something like sugar. I don't know, maybe it likes sugar. And then we can click can tame. So we'll be going and selecting that one. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to see if there is any template ones. So I'm going to see here, aggressive towards player. We're probably going to need a combination of these, honestly. So there's a passive mob, tameable mob. So that one we might be able to get away with. Yeah, so we're going to use the tameable mob one. And basically hurt entities attacked by owner, and then hurt entities that the owner attacked. And we're also going to need follow owner. Now this will be configured later on. We're not going to worry about that right now. And then wander around, enabling wandering. So we'll need those. And then look around and follow float in water. So those are the basic ones that we need for the taming one. Right now, we're not too worried about all that stuff because we're not going to be taming it at the moment. And then the last thing that we need to do is actually generate in the world. So what we're going to do is we're going to disable the despawn when idle, and that will allow it to operate very similar to creatures. And then we're also going to enable creature for the spawning, and then that will make sure that the spawning happens on the surface where things like pigs, cows, sheep, wolves, all those kind of spawn on the creature thing. So basically grass blocks, and I think they spawn on some other things as well. So the amount per group, I'm going to set a minimum to probably 2 and a maximum of 4 per group. And for the biomes, we're not going to leave or set any restrictions for this. I think it's fine the way that it is. And spawn in dungeons, we don't need to worry about it. Number of entities generated in wave, raid wave, we don't need to worry about that either. Custom spawning conditions. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and have a custom spawning one, we could set this. This will probably override the existing ones. So let's see here. Let me just read this quickly. Okay, so basically reading over this message down here, very small print, but what it's basically saying is most of these settings are going to be overwritten, except for the spawning type, which is this one right here. If we wanted it to spawn in, say, caves and stuff like that, or on surfaces, we could make an exception for the location and stuff by setting monster, but I think that would spawn it technically during the night as well. But we could set other conditions like things that we want, but right now we're just going to leave it for the vanilla one. The other thing that it will basically allow it to still use is the weight. So that's the weight part right up here. So the weight, so the maximum count and stuff is going to be overwritten by the vanilla one, or the condition down here. So we don't actually need to use that. We're just going to leave that the way it is, so we don't need to worry about that part. So that should be all good. We'll save that, and then what we can do is we can start working on those conditions next. All right, so the first condition that we're going to need is the one for the default Zeddy, which is going to be the standing, or I think it's just regular Zeddy, isn't it? Yeah, we'll just go with Zeddy layer condition, and then we'll go ahead and start that procedure. Now this one is a condition, so it's always going to have a return block. So what we're going to need is a value that we're going to basically enable when this condition is true. So basically what we've already set up is one that will be something that we can use. We need to go under entity data, and we're going to go down to custom entity, for custom entity, and then the of type, and then the get the data parameter, and then the value. So we're going to use the string one here because that's what we set. And we're going to select our model sync data, and we're going to go ahead and return if this value, we need to compare it first, and we're going to need to return this value's condition. So basically what we're going to do here is we're going to check if it's standing or normal. I don't know what we called it before, so let's go back to standing. So we'll go with this one, and we'll paste that in here, and that's basically what we're going to do for the other ones as well. So we'll save that, and then this should be set up. If it's not linked, if you don't see anything here, then you need to return it as logic statement. It's like we did in the procedure. We're basically returning it as logic, and then it will show up here. So let's do the other two. We need to do that. I'm actually just going to duplicate that condition, and we're going to go ahead aggro and save. And then what we'll do here is we'll go aggro, and then we'll duplicate this one again, and we'll do this one for sitting. Perfect. All right, so that's good. And now we just need to link that up with our conditions up here. So the first one, what we're going to do is aggro, and then we're going to do the sitting one down below. So all this is set up now, and we're going to need a few conditions in here for right-clicked on entity. So we're going to set up the right-clicked one. And we're just going to save this for now. We'll be setting up the procedures and stuff that we need for it later on. And we're probably going to need something for the update tick. I'm not sure if we're going to need an update tick one, but if we want advanced script and stuff, we'll probably be running it through the update tick one. So we'll save that one as well. So next episode, what we'll be working on is the taming mechanics next time that we visit this tutorial series. So basically we'll be setting up the ownership and taming system, and then basically applying it to the entity. I'm not sure if this is already built in with this mechanics, but we'll see if we can't set it up either way. But anyhow, if you are new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, rate the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.